Welcome back to Truckin' with Josh, starring the driver, the safety and compliance officer, and the mechanic, all working together to keep this going down the road for you guys. What's going on, everybody? We had a short one today, just picking up in Tucson, going right up to Phoenix. Normally I would either deadhead to Nogales or deadhead to Phoenix, but we actually got a load, so it's profitable this time. We're delivering here to this warehouse up in Phoenix. It's a Copper State rubber warehouse. Real simple, nothing too crazy. But like I said, normally I've been deadheading, so it was nice to do something instead of just running empty, you know. The company's got to be profitable for you to get a check, so all the money you can make is better for you. Window's cleaner. I wouldn't say it's necessarily clean, but better than it was, I guess. Fill that reefer. Oh, wait. No one's ever walking by until I'm doing so. What's going on, guys? So again, just a short little local run today. Hopefully something better comes up either later tonight or tomorrow morning. We'll see. A couple things on the table, either Missouri to the caves or possibly Kentucky. There was a Dallas run, but it fell through. But we'll see. We'll see. But anything's better than going to California, right? So I already told the story on the channel a while back, but I kind of wanted to retell the stories where they're a little more personal, a little less, I don't know, like rookie, I guess, as far as like filming goes. So every YouTube trucker has to have a "I kicked a trainee off my truck" story. That's what gets you viral. So the last one I did pretty good. It got like 10,000 views, which I thought was crazy because I had no experience with YouTube at the time. I literally just threw that video up. I didn't do much else to it. But I decided I'm going to kind of go back through, redo some of the videos that I liked. Some of the ones I thought were dumb, I'm just going to leave them off and fill the space with other stuff. But my trainee off the truck story was a good story, I think. Kind of a little play on words, because it wasn't actually a trainee. Sorry. It wasn't actually a trainee, it was actually a student, because I was working at a school. But so I had taken a year to kind of be an instructor. Well, not to kind of, to be an instructor at a school. And to me, it was a lot of fun because as a driver, I'm around other drivers. And other drivers already know trucking. So it's hard to find another driver who wants to talk about trucking when you're trucking all day, right? But I love to talk about it because I'm passionate about it, you know. And then it's like I can only annoy my wife so much with trucking stuff before she's going to be like, all right, take a break with the trucking stuff, right? When I was local, I would annoy the hell out of everybody that was in the vehicle with me, because everything we drove past would be like, hey, I deliver there. I deliver there. And they'd be like, you told us that about 100 times. But I do it every time we pass by it. You see that right there, that store? I deliver there. And so, anyway, people get annoyed hearing the same stuff over and over and over again. But anyway, so I went to the trucking school and I had a blast doing it. It didn't pay very well, which is why I left it. Plus, I just, as much as I like to teach and help and you know, give people real advice, you know, that I felt that I wasn't given when I was trying to learn. It was fulfilling to do that. It's just, you know, all the guys around me at the trucking school have been trucking for years and years and years. And this was a long time ago. You know, I've been driving for a while, but not quite as long as I have been now recently. And so I was looking at these guys, like they're all in their 50s and 60s. The guy that was the head instructor, he had gotten his CDL the year that I was born. So he had been driving for as long as I'd been alive. And I was just thinking, like, this is fun, but like, this is what you do when you're done with trucking. Like, you don't do this in the middle of trucking. I'm like, I'm still young, I could still be out making money, right? So, but I did enjoy it. So no hate to the school, no hate to the instructors, anything like that. It was just, it wasn't what I was ready to do at the time. I was still, you know, hungry for money at the time. So, but I did a little bit of everything, just not necessarily classroom. I was a yard instructor, so I would do backing, maneuvers, a lot of pre-trip. I'm sure anybody that remembers trucking school or is currently in trucking school, you know, you're pre-tripping all day, every day. So a lot of that. I also did the road stuff, so I'd take students out on the road and drive them around the city and, you know, help them learn to drive. on the road instead of just around in the yard and everything. So I was kind of everywhere. And I don't like to be a bragger on the internet, but I was really good at it. You know, and I know that's going to sound like arrogant, and I know that's cringy and all that, but I was actually really good at it, and I enjoyed it. You know, I had a lot, like I said, I had a lot of passion about it. I think that's what made me good at it, is I didn't just do it because I had to show up to get my paycheck. I did it because I was excited to go help people learn to do something new. So I was really good. I was a really good instructor. I drew people, right? We all the instructors got assigned a certain small group of students, but people would leave other groups and come to my group. And it's like, that makes you feel good. You're like, wow, I'm doing so well. People are coming from other groups to come work with me specifically. And the school administrator at one point wanted to promote me. He wanted to make me a supervisor of instructors, but it would have been overnight and I would have lost my weekends off. And I'm like, I'm home every day, and I'm going to give up my Monday through Friday, Saturday, Sunday schedule for working overnights with no pay raise. I was like, no. You know, like I said, I needed the money, and I already wasn't making a lot. But when it came to the student I had to throw off the truck, it's not who you would think it is. Right? It wasn't like a hothead. It wasn't somebody that didn't want to listen, sort of. It was a sweet little old lady. And at least that's what she seemed on the outside. So one day, sometime into my time as an instructor, you know, I had my routine. I knew what I was doing. I was comfortable with the job. A new group of students had come in. And one of the group, or part of the group, was a mother and a daughter. And they're nice people, you know, nothing against them, you know, no hate or anything like that. I'm not gonna like badmouth them or anything like that, but they came in as a mother and a daughter. The daughter, you know, was probably, she was like in her 30s maybe, and I think the mother was approaching 70. She was older, maybe late 60s, almost 70. I don't know exactly what her age was, but she was older. And they came in, and their goal was they wanted to team drive together, mother and daughter. I said, all right, you know, it's none of my business, right? I'm just here to help you learn. So they were real tight. You couldn't separate them. If you tried to assign the daughter to one group and the mother to another group, they just wouldn't have it. And, you know, which, I mean, understandable, right? You want to stay with your family members. So they accommodated that. They're just like, hey, you know, whatever, it is what it is. If we got to put two people over here instead of one and one, whatever. You're still paying for the school. You're still getting instructed. Doesn't matter. So we didn't think anything of it. But as we instructed them, I'll just tell it from my perspective. I'm not going to try to hazard what the other instructors were thinking, although I'd imagine a lot of them saw what I saw, and you know, based on what we discussed in private, they knew it was up. But I'll just tell it from my perspective, so I don't put words in anybody else's mouth. So I noticed as we were teaching them, as I was teaching them, little things that would come up. And one of the things was, like, we'd be going through pre-trip, and the mother would ask questions that on the surface would seem normal. You know, you'd be like, all right, we're going to check our fifth wheel. Why are we going to check that? That's a valid question if you've never done a pre-trip before, right? So I'd explain it. Well, then she would keep asking it. And I'm like, are you messing with me, or are you stupid? Like, what's going on here? And so I couldn't really place it, but it was getting on my nerves because she would do it all the time. And then she started doing this thing where you'd explain it, and she'd be like, well, no one ever told us that. I'm like, what are you talking about? We tell you that all day, every day. We pre-trip all the time. If you're not in a truck, you're pre-tripping. You know, this is not something you've never been told. And so it got to a point where I wasn't even going to play games anymore. She'd be like, no one ever told us that. I'd be like, we tell you that every day, lady. I don't know what you want from me. You know, like, listen to the pre-trip. If you have a question, I'm going to answer it, but don't try to play dumb with me and be like, we never told you that. You know, I know for a fact, maybe somebody else didn't, but I know for a fact that I told you that about 800 times. So it was just little stuff like that that would add up. When it came to the maneuvers, there was no in between. she was either absolutely horrendous and there was no helping her, or the only way to get it done was you had to literally walk her through it. You know, you had to like guide her like you worked at an airport. You would have to guide her through the entire maneuver, which doesn't teach her anything, right? It's like, yeah, she got it parked, but if she can't do it by herself using the mirrors, how is she going to pass the test, because you can't be there on the test? And then there were some times where she would just have it down, like perfect, no help, no help or very little help, and you never knew when it was going to happen. It was so hit or miss. It wasn't like she had a particular instructor she liked. It wasn't like it was a good or a bad day. It was just random throughout the day. It's like sometimes she's on, sometimes she's off, right? It was weird, definitely weird. But sometimes people are weird, so it's, and you can't discriminate. It's like you have to teach her. She's there. She's a paying customer. So this goes on. They hit the time where they can go on the road, and I never took her on the road the first couple times. One of the other instructors did, and he was like, it was horrible. Be careful. And I was like, oh no. And so I go, it's my day to take students on the road. It was like in a cycle. Everybody got a different day where they got to take students on the road. Basically, it was to keep you from standing in the sun every day, all day. So it was my turn. Well, she was one of the students that was going that day. She starts to climb into the truck. The trucks would hold 4 students plus the instructor. We had the seats in the back, and then we had the driver's seat, and then you would be sitting in the passenger seat. Well, she starts to climb in the truck. Her daughter goes. The other 2 people, they're like, I don't want to drive today. And that was unheard of. Everybody wanted to be in the truck. Everybody wanted to be out on the road. They didn't want to hear anything else, right? You could be like, hey, how's your pre-trip going? How's your backing? I need to get out on the road. I need to drive the truck. And you're like, calm down. But it's like everybody wanted to go on the road. That was what they were excited to do. So for them to turn it down, I was like, that's not a good sign, because that means they know how bad she is, and I should be worried. So I'm like, don't worry, it'll be okay. I convince them to go. So they get in the truck. And the route that I would take people on when they were new was a figure 8. So they'd make 3 lefts, 3 rights, and then we'd come back to the yard. So you get a little bit of everything, but you're not going through anything crazy. You're not going up to highway speeds. You're not trying to merge onto the highway yet. Real simple, right? Just an introductory run, kind of learn the shifting, because we were teaching 10 speeds. And so I take her out on the road. Finally, it's her turn to drive. She went last, and that was her choice. So not uncommon. Sometimes people are like, well, I want to watch everybody else first, and then I'll go. Not everybody wants to be first. So she went last. Her daughter went second last. Her daughter did all right. Her daughter actually wasn't too bad. Just a new driver, right? So I'm like, okay, well, how bad can this be, right? So she finally gets up, gets in the seat. We start driving. We hit the road, and immediately she's driving down the road like this, like a snake. She's not leaving her lane, but she's driving in between the lines like this, like we're bumper car, just bing, bing, bing off the lines. And I'm like, you got to keep it straight. You got to keep it straight. We're swerving back and forth here. We want to just drive straight in the middle of the lane. And she's like, I'm not swerving. I'm like, you're drifting back and forth. Sometimes your mirrors are crossing those lines. We got to keep it in a straight line. I am in a straight line. She keeps arguing, and I'm like, I can't just be like, well, whatever, right? That's not my job. So I have to keep trying to get this correct, because if I don't, the instructor or her tester is going to notice as well. And then it's going to be my fault because I didn't do anything. So I'm like, you got to keep it straight. You got to keep it. She's just getting more and more and more frustrated. And I'm getting frustrated too, because I'm like, hey, idiot, I'm not just saying this to be funny. I'm telling you this because it's happening and I'm seeing it, right? But I can't talk to her like that. So she goes to make a left turn, and it's a 4-lane road with the suicide lane in the center. That's also the left turn lane for the light. Well, there's 2 lanes, so she's got plenty of room to make the left, right? And there's a truck in the turn lane turning left. He's northbound, we're turning southbound off a westbound street. So he's like this,
and we're turning across the front of them, right? So the light turns green, we get the arrow. She starts to turn. Well, she just turns immediately, as if she doesn't have a trailer. And I'm like, you gotta go straight more. We gotta go straight more. To the point where I had to grab the wheel and turn the wheel because she started to turn immediately. And I'm like, what are you doing? You know, we barely missed the front of that dude's truck. I could see him looking, you know, and but we made it. And she's like, well, no one ever told us that. And I'm like, are you fucking nuts? You know, and I'm like, there's something wrong with this lady, right? And so we keep going, and we go to make a right turn, and she does the same thing. She just starts turning, and I'm having to like kind of nudge the wheel, like, whoa, 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 whoa. You know, luckily on a right turn there was nothing there. It was just a curb, not even a pole, so thank God for that. But you know, she was gonna run over the curb, and I'm like, if you hit a curb on the test, that's automatic disqualification. You're out. You know, you'd have to retest. No one ever told us about these turns. I'm like, what are you talking about? You know, this, like, just unhinged. And I'm like, are you really messing with me, or is something wrong with you? You know, it was so off that it didn't feel real. Like, I felt like I was being punked or something. Like I was looking for the camera crew. And so I'm like, whatever, we're almost done, because she was the last driver. So I'm like, let's just get back to the yard. We're gonna do the best we can. So we start driving back to the yard, and she's snaking the whole way, you know, and I'm over there with my clipboard. Drive straight. I am driving straight. No, you're not. You know, we're like, I was like at the point where I'm just like, I don't know what to do. Like, I'm telling you everything and you're not listening. But she's also not endangering anybody's lives, and she's not telling me no. Like, if I correct her steering, she listens. So I'm like, it was a weird gray area. So I'm like, okay, nobody's in danger, but this is definitely weird. We're gonna have to have a discussion about this when we get back to the yard. So I start telling her how to shift, right? I'm just working through shifting. We're going down this little industrial road. There's no one around. So I'm like, okay, slow down, downshift. Okay, speed up, upshift. You know, we're just going through the gears. I'm like, let's try to get something productive done before we get back to the yard. It's like a mile away. We would make a right turn and then a left back into the yard. Well, as she's going, luckily we were in the slowing down phase, and I don't know if that had something to do with it. As we're slowing down and she's downshifting, we're going pretty fast, like 20 miles an hour, which isn't insane, but a little fast to take a right turn. She just busts a right turn out of nowhere. I didn't tell her to turn. I didn't tell her to get ready to turn. We weren't at the yard to make the turn yet. We still had quite a ways to go to get there. She just busts a right turn out of nowhere, drags the trailer through the gravel on the edge of the curb there. And I'm like, what are you doing? And she's like, I'm turning. I'm like, yeah, but I didn't tell you to. She's just, and luckily no one was there. There was no cars. There's nothing for her to hit. It was just gravel. But, you know, we shouldn't have done it, you know, and everybody in the back is like, you know, like, what do we, you know, and I'm like, we're not dead, relax. And so I tell her, stop the truck right now. And she's like, why? And I'm like, you're not going to question me on that. So I pulled the brakes. We skid to a stop. And I'm like, you're out of the driver's seat right now. You're done. Well, don't you raise your voice at me. And I was like, I don't care. That was unhinged and unsafe. You're out of the driver's seat right now. So she finally gets up out of the seat. Her daughter's yelling at me like, you don't talk to my mom. I'm like, your mother is going to kill someone. So I am absolutely going to talk to your mother like that. And I was like, I didn't curse at her, but she needs to be yelled at, because this is quite frankly ridiculous. You know, it was unhinged. So I drive us the rest of the way back to the yard, right? Park the truck, take the keys so nobody can mess with the truck. And they're like, you know, they're getting out of the truck. I just walk away, and they're calling me, and I just ignored them. I went straight to the boss and I said, dude, problem, right? So he calls the other instructor that had driven with her in there. We tell him what we're seeing and you know, everything. And personally, we thought she had dementia, that she wasn't all there, and that's why she had up days and down days, is because her brain was like, sometimes she was on, sometimes she was off. She was off. And it wasn't that she was stupid, because she was like a retired teacher. She had multiple degrees. Like, you know, she had a lot of things that she had achieved, and she had like written like articles, things like that. Like, she was an intelligent person. So there was something wrong with her. And there was something wrong with the daughter too, because she seemed kind of like a weirdo, but that was wholly unrelated. I think she was just an odd person, maybe sheltered, I don't know. And so they're like, well, we can't discriminate against her. And so they didn't really know what to do, but they knew they had to do something. And so what they did was, they're like, just keep teaching her. Do not take her on the public roads. They're like, we have to take her out to drive, but don't go on any major streets. You, as the instructor, drive to like a little warehouse district where there's very, very little traffic, you know, these little back roads. And that's the only place she's allowed to drive. When her drive time is up, either another student who you trust can drive, or you will drive the truck back to the yard, but she is not to be on the road. But we have to let her, you know, we have to keep instructing her, because she can sue us for discrimination because of her age, and, you know, if she does have some kind of a condition, whatever the case may be. So we're like, all right, we don't really have a choice. So another unhinged week goes by of just arguing with her, watching her do these weird things, you know, and luckily she didn't hurt anybody. Well, finally it comes down to test day. And we had an on-site tester. He ran them through. They both, so here's what it was. They tested the mother first. She failed pre-trip immediately. She got to the air brake portion, couldn't even get through it. Complete failure, right? So she was out. Then the daughter went through the whole pre-trip, got towards the end, realized she was doing good. I can't prove this. This is just my theory. And then, we think she purposely failed the test because her mom failed, and she didn't want to go on ahead without her mom. So she failed her pre-trips. They both failed their pre-trip. They had to retake their test. So they had a couple more days of practice. Then when they went to retest, they said, we're not going to test you. We're going to send you to the DMV, and the DMV is going to test you. That way there's no, you can't say we're discriminating against you. We can't say we're being mean against you, whatever the case may be, right? So they take her down to both of them down to the DMV. And the mother fails immediately. But they test the daughter first this time, and she passed her pre-trip. And she did pretty good. She only missed a couple points. Like, the daughter did all right. Well, the mother failed immediately on the air brake test. Couldn't get through it. And so, you know, the mother was out. You know, they're like, you know, that's it. We can't, you're out of time. You know, you can pay for more school, or, you know, sorry, you didn't make it. You're not going to be a truck driver. And, which was ridiculous because they weren't paying. They were on some work program, so they weren't even paying. So the daughter naturally was angry, but she chose to continue. So when she got to the backing, she couldn't do the straight back. She failed out of her test on the straight back. And they did turn around and try to sue the school, but I don't think it ever went anywhere because I never heard anything about it. But I mean, the whole situation, like, once it got close to the testing day, they were a nightmare to deal with. It was constant battles, constant arguments. Nobody wanted to work with them. You know, it made it tough for you as an instructor. And when they were in the truck, they were so slow that they were impacting the other students' time. You know, so if one of my students could jump in the truck, do a 45 and a parallel in like 10-15 minutes if they're struggling, and then, you know, their turn is over and the next person comes up, well, they would spend sometimes an hour in the truck. And you're not allowed to be like, well, you're not allowed to be in the truck because you're holding everybody else up, because they're paying to be there, right? So it made it very frustrating, not just for us, but for the other students, you know, because they're like, dude, I'm paying for the school too, and I'm sitting here for an hour watching this idiot fuck around, you know. And you're like, hey man, I get it, but everybody's got to be treated the same, right? I got to give them the same instruction that I would give you, even if it seems like it's unfair to you. And I mean, it was a nightmare. That was the most frustrating month of my life, because they were there for 4 weeks, a little over 4 weeks, because when they failed the first time, they got a little extra time to practice, so probably 5 weeks. But I know it doesn't really count as a trainee on the truck. I've only trained 2 people in my life, and I didn't have to kick them off the truck. But I think that counts as throwing a trainee off my truck, because that was horrible. But anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed the story. I'm glad I could tell it with more confidence. I'm glad I could put a little something interesting at the beginning of the video, so it's not just me yapping for the whole video. But I hope you guys enjoyed, and I hope you guys stick around, and I hope the channel can go somewhere. But thanks for watching, guys. Like and subscribe if you want to see more stuff like